Hello and welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals who want to stay ahead of the game by hearing from the leading innovators in the event industry. My name is Miguel Neves and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of EventMB. In this episode titled Simplicity as the Key to Event Success, I have the pleasure of speaking with Alicia Schiro, CEO and founder of Asted Events. Our conversation focuses on how independent planners can deal with the challenges and opportunities they are currently facing. We talk about how providing a better alternative is the secret to managing client expectations. We talk about why giving attendees choice is so important. We talk about interaction and how it's crucial in hybrid events. And we talk about what opportunities exist for event professionals in the metaverse. And we talk about why the event industry needs to be more united in order to be recognized. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the Event Manager Podcast with tips and insights from today's most influential event professionals. You can find all the episodes on our website or subscribe through your favorite podcast service. And now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phlife.com to learn more. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast. I am delighted to be joined by Alicia Schiro, the CEO and founder of Asted Events. Alicia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we've only really met very recently, but I've read a lot about you. I've done a bit of research about your work, and I've seen other things that you've done. But I'd love to hear from you directly. How would you describe yourself? And if you could tell us a little bit about your career, how did you get to be you?
Sure. Well, I think my journey started in trade shows. I was working for a technology company, and I started doing their trade shows, and we would build a booth and, the typical trade show technology conferences. And I was at that company for about 6 years. And then from there, I ended up in an advertising company, which was kind of unique in its own sense of the word advertising. So they are a traditional advertising company, but we actually had a 5,000 square foot venue in our office that we would hold our internal town halls in and stuff like that. And during the day, it was a cafe. And at night, it was a bar. So we had a licensed bar in our office, which was super unique and, as you can imagine, fun. So I started doing our global client events in that space. And then I started to see that there was a demand for that space for our clients, even when it didn't involve our company. They wanted to host their events in our space and would want me to do it for them. So we actually turned it into kind of a revenue generating machine. And we would lease the space to them, for that night to host their event. And then internally, we would take that money and use it for the employees to have our employee events. So our holiday parties, our summer parties. So we were able to fund those and do some really cool and exciting stuff. And I was able to work with a lot of global brands at that time, and it really built my clientele. And so when I left there, I went to a startup event planning company. And I took some of those clients with me. And, we were doing their events, and I was a partner at this event startup. And I was there for a little over 2 years. There were some issues with management and hiring and all of these different things as a partner. And I just saw where it was going. And I was kind of like, I think it's time for me to start my own business. So that's how Asted Events was born.
That sounds great. It sounds like a great kind of organic growth, right? So sort of from venue to understanding. And did you have any sort of training in the management of the events? How did you kind of, was it just by sort of doing and learning?
Correct. Yeah, doing and learning. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, sink or swim types of things. When I was in college, which I only went to a community college, and there was no event planning, there was maybe marketing, but it wasn't for really events. It was more marketing a product or something like that. So there was no school background that you could kind of, go to college for at that time. So I'm dating myself, but yes, that's so it was just kind of, learn as you go, trial by fire.
Absolutely. We hear kind of similar things from a lot of people in the events. And so this is kind of a fun question, but I think it has a serious side to it as well. When you explain to friends and family what you do, those that are maybe outside of the event industry, what do you say to them?
Right. I basically just say I have an event production company and we plan corporate events. I think that kind of just sums it up and keeps it simple because most people will be like, oh, you plan parties. And I always laugh at that, nothing, because it's just it's just the dumbed down version of what event planners do. It's more than just planning a party. Even if you want to say you're just planning a party, you're never just really planning a party. You're driving attendance, you're getting people to come. There's so many intricacies, you're hiring multiple vendors for one event. I mean, it's more than just, the term planning a party. But I always love when someone says you're a party planner. But yeah, in a sense, yes.
That keeps it simple, right? I think at least it gives people an obvious kind of reference point, right?
Keeps it simple, yeah.
So, I mean, let's get serious for a second. It's events, or many events are much more than planning parties. And I think you'll agree that events can be valuable and great events can be valuable. What in your mind, if there is a way to generalize this, really differentiates an event, any event, from a kind of great event? What makes events go from,
good
existing, functioning, exactly, good to great? What sets those great events apart?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what my company specializes in. Asted Events looks for that unique element that does take the event from good to great. So one of the ways that we like to do that is, what we look at is if a client can go and purchase the same thing that we're curating for them, then what's the point of them hiring us? What drives us is we want to give you something that you can't go and do yourself. So for example, one of my clients was looking for a way to reach all of their partners and customers in 20 cities. They do these road shows. So when doing a road show, you have maybe 20 people in every city that are their top partners and customers that they want to get in front of. So what is the best way to do that? And what is the way to get them to show up to this event? Because they're going after C-level executives. These C-level executives are getting invited out 4 out of 5 days of the week. So your event needs to be good enough to get them to even want to show up. So the way we do that is offering something unique that they couldn't just go and do on their own. So whether that's driving an exotic car with a race car driver, that's teaching them something new that they would not normally do on their own. So we bring in that expert. It's about access to people or places that they normally would not have access to. So one of the biggest things that we've done was a 20-city tour with the rock band Foreigner. So when we did this tour, not only did they get to see the show, which anyone can go to a concert, right? But this was a backstage tour with the lead singer. You get to meet and greet the entire band. You're hanging out with them. You're going to a beer tasting with them. You're doing all of these things behind the scenes before the concert even starts. So that was something unique and different that they would never be able to do on their own. And again, like another thing was what I mentioned earlier, driving an exotic car. Well, anyone can go drive an exotic car, but we're bringing you an expert in that's teaching you how to drive the car. You know, he is a professional race car driver. And you're driving a race car or an exotic car, whatever car you're driving. And then there could be, you know, any kind of sporting event, or, you know, if we're taking you to Yankee Stadium, hopefully we're getting you on the, you know, on the pitcher's mound for a photo, and you're doing a tour of the locker room and you're meeting one of the players. So there's always these elements that we're adding in to make the event an exceptional experience.
So that, I think that answers that question very well. And what I mean, of course, access is a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
But is there more to it? Is there, you know, safety, security, risk management? Is there kind of planning that you see as really important that maybe individuals may not have kind of foreseen? Like, what other kind of, you know, what other kind of ROI do you deliver for your clients?
Right. And I think that's the big question, right? The ROI, that's what they're always looking for. Like the number one thing, I think people are so, like planners are so caught up in all the details and making it a successful event that you forget what the goal of the event is. Yes, all of that is priority. It has to be exceptional. It has to be great. It has to hit all of these elements, right? But if you forget the client's goal, then the event could be as great as anything you've ever done. But if they don't sell anything during that event, you miss the mark. The whole point is they're looking to close deals. That's not on us. But what is on us is to get these people to show up so that they're able to get in front of them and have that time to connect with them and get a deal done. Like, you know, you could be spending $1 million on an event, but remember, it only takes one deal to recoup that money. So you know, these corporate entities are closing deals that are worth, you know, millions of dollars. So that's the goal of the event. The goal of the event is to always be closing, you know, ABC, always be closing, right? So that's the goal of the event. So you have to create that environment where they're able to do that. So for example, if the music is too loud in a restaurant, or the music is too loud anywhere and they can't have a conversation, that already defeats the purpose. You have to have a plan, time set up, where they get that one-on-one, alone, quiet time to have these conversations, and that they're doing something that they can connect on and relate to. The whole reason you're doing an experience is to share something. The whole point is to share something in common so that you can follow up with them 2 weeks later and be like, hey, remember that great event we went to? And I told you I was going to get back to you on this. Well, I got it, and here it is. It's the follow-up that comes after the event. So it's all of these goals that the client has that have to stay at the forefront of your mind when executing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It just thought of something. I mean, when you have a diverse set of clients and they might have different business objectives, different kind of needs, are you ever saying no to anybody? And if you are, could you talk a little bit about sort of why you would ever say no to a client?
Yes, you definitely have to manage expectations. So it's not that you're saying no, right? I never say no because I don't like when people say no to me. There's always a way. There's always a way. Figure it out. That's my advice. Like your job is to figure it out. If you're saying no, they can hire anyone to say no. So the point is, do your homework and figure it out and come up with an alternative. So you're never really saying no. Your job is to change their mind, right? So you have to lead them down the road of explaining why this is not the best idea, but here's what I think is going to work better for you. So it's more about managing the expectation. You're not saying no, you're offering an alternative, and that alternative has to be better. So you're looking for something that, you know, is going to get the same end result, but in a more effective way.
Yeah, I like that. The alternative has to be better. That seems like a really good thing to kind of direct people to kind of, ooh, there's a shiny object over here that maybe it's shinier in a different way, but hopefully you'll find that interesting.
Right. And there was a lot of that with the virtual when the entire world shut down and events were, you know, no longer events. When we quickly pivoted to doing virtual, clients at first were like, well, should we bring in production? Should we do all these things? Like, what do we got to make it look great? And like all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I understand what you're saying, but my perspective was, why spend all of this money if we don't know if it's going to work or not? So I think we can get the same result, not bringing in full production. We're, use a laptop. We got a little ring light. We're doing you can dumb it down enough to where maybe you're spending $200 on equipment. You're getting a webcam, you're getting a little light, you got a little microphone. What's that? $200. We'd buy the equipment, ship it out to the talent and teach them how to set it up. As opposed to bringing in major production, spending $5,000, which at the time didn't make a lot of sense. So I was like, let's do it this way first. And they were like, all right, let's try it your way. We'll see how it goes. Why spend the money? You're right. Let's try it. So we do 1 or 2, see how it goes. And it was a great decision because we didn't need to spend all that money on equipment. We got the same result. And again, though, this was in 2020, right? 2021, it was time to level up. We're bringing in full production. We're getting lights. Now we're producing, TV shows. So, there's a scale, right? There's a scale as things go on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And you reminded me of this kind of period in 2020 where it sort of became the thing to send speakers, a nice microphone and a better camera or something like that. That seems really far away now. I mean, do you still do that for any clients, or is that sort of assumed that most people have that already?
Exactly. Yep. If they mostly everyone now does have it. And if they don't, then, and now we're at the point where we are bringing in full production because people now are okay with having techs on site. And we're using switchboards because we're live streaming. So you can't necessarily teach someone, how to operate a switchboard too and do the event. So it's definitely has developed since then. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about this kind of development. Okay, you were doing, of course, in-person meetings, and then we all had to pivot, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But talk to me a little bit about the development. I mean, you picked a really interesting time there when kind of we went virtual and we were kind of figuring it out. Can you pinpoint sort of different phases of how your production and the work that you're doing in virtual, hybrid, or in person has sort of developed?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So 2020, we kept it very much, I would say bare bones in a sense of like, we were shipping out cameras, webcams, microphones, earbuds, if they didn't have them. And then I would say after 6 months of doing that, it was, okay, look, now you're going to go buy the stuff. You've done like my talent that I was working with. I mean, we were busy. 2020 was my best year. So, a few months in, I'm like, all right, guys, you got to spend the money. Like we're doing all these events, like you're going to spend a little money and you're going to get all this equipment because now you're making they were doing well. And they
Is
were
this
okay with
the
that.
talent, like professional speakers?
Yeah.
Or kind of,
Yep.
Okay.
So we're talking celebrities, we're talking, their assistants, all kinds of talent, bartenders that I was working with, mixologists, sommeliers, everyone. So now they started to invest in their own equipment because even if they're not doing it with me, they can be doing it with other people. I mean, like this was their new business now. Like now you're home and this is what you're doing. You got to make the investment, and they did.
I wonder if some of those collected like 6 or 7 microphones from different companies and things like that.
They all have like multiple kinds of earbuds, which ones work better, which ones don't. Yeah, I think, we were testing everything then, different webcams, microphones, all of that. And then we started doing multiple cameras. So that was the next stage. So it was, okay, first we send you the equipment, then you go buy your own equipment. And then it was, in 2021, it was, okay, now we need multiple angles. We want to see a close-up overhead, and then we want a full view of what's happening. And then it was, okay, now we're bringing in full production. Now we have a camera operator. Now we have a switchboard. Now we're going back and forth. Then it was, now we're live streaming. So last year I did 2 live concerts with Keith Urban and Sammy Hagar. One was live streamed from Australia, and the other one was live streamed from California. and flawless. I mean, all of it. Like the technology, the one thing we got out of all of this is the technology has always been there. We just weren't using it for this purpose. So it was really interesting to see how the technology kind of enabled us to produce better events.
Let me just backtrack to the one you mentioned before. So when you said multiple angles, were then speakers being asked to go into studios to do their presentation, or were they setting up multiple cameras in their own home?
Correct. Multiple cameras in their own home. But
Wow.
and then, so ironically though, this year, the talent has built their own studios. So now we're at that stage. So a lot of my talent that I work with, on site, they built full production studios, and it's amazing. It's amazing what people can do, even just to use New York as an example, you look at the restaurant industry, right? They built restaurants outside on the street of their actual restaurant. So, I feel like the hospitality industry is just filled with type A personalities and, we're going to figure it out. And that's the beauty of it.
Yep, fascinating. And I mean, do you work with a lot of sort of corporate speakers? Might be CEOs or people like that. And do you see a similar path in how their kind of equipment level and their knowledge of working with the equipment has developed?
Correct. So yes, even if I'm bringing in the celebrity for a virtual talk or a cooking event or whatever it is, there's always a host that's kind of interacting with them. And typically it is a C-level executive from the company, because again, the idea is first they promote their product and then we go into the entertainment. So that C-level executive will be at home. And yeah, I have a sound engineer on my events that will say to them, okay, position your camera arm's length away, brighten up your screen, move the lighting in this direction. So yeah, they're all getting on board,
Absolutely. I think it goes a long way if you have somebody who knows what they're doing, at least helping to direct and get the most out of the technology that you have there. So yeah, I hear you. So, I mean, you have a really impressive roster of clients, a lot of celebrities, I believe you work with. How did that really come about? I mean, it's not like somebody just kind of knows your number off by heart when you're starting off, really. What do you feel was like the point where you broke into that circuit?
I just think it's more of, what the client is looking for, right? So if they're looking for that element to really level up and get their audience engaged, that's one really good way to do it, because you're getting this environment where you wouldn't typically have that access, right? Again, it's about access. So if you're, a huge sports fan and, we're interviewing, whether it's Scottie Pippen or Jerry Rice or someone like that, and you're able, and it's not just about their sports career, it's more about their personal journey, their motivation, how they kept moving. Why are they the best? What did they do that, no other player did or didn't do? And how did they become as great as they are? And it's interesting because the more I'm listening to all of these interviews that I'm doing and being a part of, there is a pattern, the number one pattern that I've seen with all these was hard work. Like, you're talking hours and hours of training, and you'll hear Jerry Rice say his dad used to throw bricks to him, like they were building, they were in construction, and that's how he learned to catch so well. His dad would toss him a brick, as they're building stuff. And, there's all of these different things along their personal journeys that really help them to develop the work ethic that they have. Like Michael Jordan, everybody else would go home after practice. He goes home and eats and comes back and practices again. So there's all of these, different stories that you're hearing, but then you start to see a pattern. And I think that's what people are looking for, that unique story, that then internally helps their business. You're trying to drive your employees to work harder and to motivate them. And what's a better way than having them listen to someone who's done it, and done it successfully.
And do you see parallels from that into your experience? I mean, your development of your career. Are there hundreds of hours of hard work in the background that people then look at you and think of instant success?
Right. I don't know that I think instant success, but it's that old saying, the harder I work, the luckier I get. A lot of people will say, luck. And I don't believe it's luck at all. I do think it's hard work. And it's just being resilient and, never giving up. Like, you have to find what drives you. I know a lot of people will say, know your why. And not that you shouldn't know your why. You should, of course, know your why. Why are you doing it? That's, a big part of what is going to keep you going. But what is really going to drive and motivate you on those days where you're exhausted and you don't want to get out of bed is, what is that drive? Like, what drives you to keep going? What are your goals? Like, what, you have to have that element of what's next, so that you keep recreating and building and all of those things that you need to keep doing in order to stay relevant. That's the key.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
So let's talk about what's next, as you mentioned. Would love to kind of hear what you're pitching at the moment, if you can share with us, and particularly what are you most excited about? Are there event formats that are really interesting that you're pitching? Are there certain venues that you think are really going to make it or break it in the next few months? What's exciting you that you're kind of proposing to your clients?
So I think, what's exciting for me is, and I know a lot of people are hearing of this word, the metaverse, and there's all different metaverses. And I don't want to get into the whole, like, what's a metaverse and all of that. But basically, depending on what metaverse you're looking into, a lot of the global brands are now advertising in the metaverse. So whether people want to say it's a fake reality and it's not the real world, it's the fake world. Yes, it is. But the interesting thing now, what's happening is it's not just a gaming community. It's not just for gamers anymore. So what's now happening is brands are integrating the real world into the metaverse world. So basically, let's use Nike for an example. They created a new shoe only to be sold in the metaverse. And in 6 minutes, they made $3.1 million. So, the concept is being proven, and brands are advertising there. And as you know, the NFTs, there's many NFTs that are being bought and sold in the metaverse, and those are being built by brands. So this is the direction we're going, period. So if you're a brand and you're looking for an additional revenue stream, that's how I'm trying to position it to my clients. It's not replacing anything. People have the misconception that, okay, well, and I've said this myself, I have a hard enough time living in the real world right now, trying to, execute and do everything I have to do in the real world. And then you have a secondary metaverse where now, I look at that as an additional revenue stream. So it's not replacing anything. It's in addition to what you're already doing. And it's going to be another way that we interact with one another. Like, it's a different form of social media. And eventually I think social media is going to be going in this direction more so than what we're currently used to seeing.
That's really interesting. You see it sort of a replacement of social media in a way?
I don't see it as a replacement. I think it's going to be an enhanced version of how we're used to interacting. Like, let's say on Instagram, right? It's one-way communication. You're scrolling, you're looking, you're replying, you're doing all these things, but you can't go anywhere with anyone. So now if you're in the metaverse, you're doing all the same thing. You're looking at stuff, you're looking at NFTs, you're looking at different buildings, you're going, now you can attend a concert with a friend, and your avatar can buy designer clothing now, built by these brands that are now selling clothing in the metaverse. So it's going to be a different way that we interact with one another. And the entertainment element is already there. So they're already having concerts there. They're already going to events there. So this stuff is already happening.
And are you then pitching metaverse to any of your clients? Is that part of what you're working on?
So we're talking about it again. I think people just 2 years ago had to wrap their brains around going virtual, which is a whole new way of doing things than what we ever did before, right? And so now, 2 years later, there's this element. So, I think it's going to take a little bit of time for people to kind of catch on to what's happening, but what I'm seeing is brands are already doing it. So we have case studies to use as examples, and I think that always helps. So yeah, the conversations are definitely happening. And what's next is, that will be, in my opinion, another revenue stream for any kind of brand.
I like it. So let's put a hypothetical situation. A brand kind of says, let's do it. Let's jump on the metaverse. Let's do an event on the metaverse, a concert, whatever it is. What would you do next? Like, what would be your way to kind of plan that out? And if you have any insights into technology or partners that you would use, feel free to share anything that you would in terms of that process.
Right. So, a couple of things has to happen, again, depending on what they want to do, but let's just use a concert as an example. Let's say they want to get 20 of their, top customers or partners, and they all want to go to this concert together, and they want to have VIP seats to it and whatever else they want to have. So you can reach out to a concert that's already existing and maybe have them attend that, or you can build your own concert. So in my opinion, you're going to be able to rent space. There's a lot of land being sold, a lot of venues being built, and all of that sort of stuff. So I'm quite certain that you can't do it yet, but I'm quite certain you will be able to do it soon. You'll be able to rent a venue. You'll be able to bring in talent. They're already doing DJs. So DJs have already been performing there. So it wouldn't be a reach for a singer or an artist to then perform. And you would basically, exactly, again, this is what I said to my clients about virtual. Anything we did in a live event, we can do virtual. So what would you want to do if it was a live event? And they would tell me, and I say, okay, this is how we're going to do it virtually. So now the question is going to be, what event did you want to do, whether it's live or virtual? We're going to take that same exact event and we're going to do it again in the metaverse. Same exact thing. Nothing changes. The only thing that's changing is your delivery, right? How are you attending? How are you interacting? Nothing else changes.
I like that. I think it's very much around the ROI, right? The return on investment. Right. Again. If you can define that clearly, then the kind of avenue of getting there, whether it's live, metaverse, in person, whatever it is, that doesn't really change anything. As long as that works, right? Then
exactly.
Then right. It works for everybody.
Yeah. All the moving pieces still have to be great. And then, and also, you have to simplify things for people. I feel like, they say, Tony Robbins uses this term, which I love. It's overcomplicating things is like the devil, right? So you really want to simplify stuff for people. I feel like when someone's trying to overcomplicate something, that is when people start to retract and not want to move forward because they're not necessarily understanding. So I think it's, understanding it yourself, doing your homework, understanding how it works, and then finding a really simple way to explain that to other people.
I like that. I think it's simple is not easy. Simple Correct. Is hard, and making things feel simple in a good way is is usually very complicated, right?
Exactly. And it's funny you say that because most people do not understand that. It's like, I remember someone once said, "Oh, you're naive to think it's that simple." I'm like, really? I'm like, that could be your opinion. But I think what people like to overcomplicate things. And I just don't think it has to be that complicated. It's like, if you're able to do your research and explain something in a simpler way, you're right. It is much harder to do that. But if you can do it, that's when you become successful, because you want to make it accessible and easy for everyone. Once you start overcomplicating things, people are lost and they're like, they don't get it. So they're not going to move forward. They're going to stay in their current format because they know it and they trust it. So if you can't come to them with explaining something in simpler terms that makes sense, then, that to me is success. So once you can do that, then you will have success.
And do you think events are sort of a channel in which to do that? So, if it's an internal event or if it's an association event, if it can help bring people to content or to concepts and in a simple way, then that can be very effective, right? It's not just sort of an event where you have fun or whatever. If you can kind of reach those objectives, it sounds like events can be a good technique almost to getting there.
Exactly right. I mean, that is the point, right? I mean, you want to create an environment where people are comfortable and relaxed, right? So if they're having fun and they're enjoying the experience, they're going to be more open, open to listening, more receptive, and you're connecting on a different level. So when you have those conversations that are business oriented and you're keeping it simple, like one of the number one things I hear from clients is, we don't want to do a whole presentation. But no one wants to hear that anymore. Like there's conferences set up specifically for that, right? But you have to remember, people's attention span is like 3 seconds these days. So, I mean, if you can't deliver, the old elevator pitch, you'll say to someone, describe to me your business in 1 sentence. If you can't do that, you don't understand your business. And that goes back to keeping things simple again. Like even if you're running the most complicated technology and software, the top salespeople have found a way to explain those things very simplistically so that everyone can understand. And it's taking those same elements with an event and executing the same way, creating that relaxed environment where everybody's having a good time, where you are allowing the client the opportunity to deliver that message however they want to deliver it. And a lot of times with these events, they don't want to do a whole hour-long presentation. They want 20 minutes, 20 minutes of business, and the rest of the time is built in to have a good time. And then when it happens organically, that's the difference.
Absolutely. I think that's a nice way to think about it. It's that, apparent simplicity almost, not simplicity just for not approaching it, but really kind of folding it out, making it easy for everybody to understand.
Right.
Very good. So what about kind of technology? You touched on it a little bit. I know you deal a lot with technology. Are there any specific pieces or brands of technology, connected to events that you're particularly excited about or that you're working with that you see a lot of potential for?
I think, where I'm doing my homework right now, again, is looking for people that can develop immersive experiences in the metaverse. I mean, if you're a kid in college right now, that's where you want to be looking. It's all of these people who can write code, all of the creatives that are building 3D, anything 3D, immersive 3D is going to be the future, because the more interactive it is, the better the experience, right? So if, right now what I'm seeing is you can go into the metaverse and you can physically try on clothing on your avatar and you can see what it looks like. And if you're Nike, you're looking at a shoe and you're holding the shoe and you can do a 360 view of the shoe. You can try the shoe on. So it's all of this, making it is interactive and immersive and lifelike as possible. So it's any companies that are now starting to do all of that. And there's not that many actually. So there's a few that are doing it. But I'm sure, you know, right now, everybody, if you are a company that is digital, that does these creative, immersive experiences, you know, you're looking to add on and build out that part of the business because there's going to be a demand for that.
And are there any particular brands that that you're looking at, any particular platforms? And you know, this is a an open podcast, so we're very happy for you to mention ones. If you want to.
I mean, I don't have a brand that I'm looking at like specifically, one more than the other. So I don't have a particular brand, but I do think that there's going to be plenty more where, you know, plenty more in that area coming to life soon.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of developments there, and kind of we're at the moment we're preparing the virtual event tech guide, and it's interesting to see which ones are kind of more in that space. I think the majority are still very much kind of website based, but there are quite a few heading in that area. So interesting to see how that develops. And what about kind of, you know, the bigger challenges facing the industry? We've just, you know, we are hopefully coming out of this crazy COVID period. But their challenges aren't over. You're right. Challenges are always coming in different formats. Where do you see the biggest challenges? I don't know, maybe the next 2 or 3 years coming from?
I think, you know, social events, they're booming, right? The social events, everybody's like weddings. This year is crazy for weddings. You can't even book a venue for a wedding. I think corporate is going to be interesting. Corporate events are still happening, of course. We are starting to see more live than, you know, starting from May on. But to me, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what kind of happens going forward. I think right now everybody's kind of tippy-toeing back into it. You're not seeing these large scale, huge conferences that everybody was once doing. And I think what, in my opinion, might be happening is instead of them doing one large conference, they may split that up, you know, into regions where you're more local. I think businesses are realizing, why do we have to fly the whole company someplace when we didn't have to do that for 2 years? So they're saving a ton of money on less travel, you know, less cost to build these venues that are so huge. You know, when you're looking into production, building a venue out for 1,000 is very different than 100. So I think there's going to be quite a bit of change on that front as far as scale, size, how often. We'll see, you know, we'll see.
And if you had to sort of bet on something, would you have any kind of bets that you would place on which direction that's going to go, or how to tackle that?
I think, you know, it's good to just have a variety of offerings for your client, right? Like, I don't think virtual is never going to go away, right? It's part of the offering now. So if you're offering virtual, you're offering live, and you're offering hybrid. So, and I think hybrid is a beautiful thing. And I think it's really going to help companies, because if they didn't want to do a large conference, what they can do in each region is you do a smaller version of the same conference and you live stream it. So then you kind of have viewing parties in every other city. So maybe you only have the speakers in one city and you're only flying them, right? So you don't have to fly the whole company. And then you're doing viewing parties in every other city. And in my opinion, it's just as effective. I mean, everybody is still participating. Again, you're just interacting in a different way. It's never, you know, and again, nothing is ever going to replace live interaction, right? I'm just saying it might not happen as often as it used to. There'll be different forms of that live interaction, and it may be smaller groups. But again, the offering is have it all, right? Have virtual, have live, have hybrid, and eventually have the metaverse.
I wonder if we're going to come up with a new term for metaverse events. It's like hybrid, and then there's a hybrid enhanced metaverse events or something like that. I think that might be.
I mean, right now we're just kind of calling them 3D immersive events, but we'll see. I'm sure there's going to be a terminology that will change.
Do you think it would be possible in the future to have, a hybrid event where you can be online or in person, but experience the same events in a metaverse version as well? Kind of.
Oh yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm.
And so would you see the people in person as sort of also wearing VR and being in there, or would they be sort of in a different version of the event and then, I guess, be rendered in the metaverse? I don't really know how that would work out.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, like what I love about the metaverse that we're seeing right now is you don't need the headsets. You don't really need any of that. So I think once that gets developed to a higher level, it's there, but it's a little glitchy, it's a little slow. I think that's going to improve. I think people like not having to wear it, right? Not having to wear the headgear, not having to. But then I think there's a place for that, because the experience you get wearing it is, I'm sure you've done it, like you really do feel like you're there. So again, I think it's going to be up to the individual. Like you're going to get to choose the experience you want. And I think that's going to be the wow factor, right? You can wear the headset if you want to feel like you're really there, or you can enter in as your avatar and you don't need to wear the headset, or you can actually go to the event. So you're going to have a choice. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because if, this ever happens again, with a virus or whatever, and let's say we couldn't really be in person, or folks are not comfortable being in person, then I think this offers a lot of different alternatives.
Yep. I'm interested in that concept of offering the ultimate choice, really, because if there's a good reason for the event to exist, if there are good people involved, then having different options on how to access the event should just present better opportunities, right? And hopefully we can keep it simple so that it's just not confusing over all the different options, right?
Yep. That'll be the interesting thing.
Absolutely. So a bit of a big picture question for you. If you were able to change anything about the event industry on a sort of macro level, what would you like to change, or how would you like to see the event industry change in some way?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think, after this experience the last 2 years, I think what really needs to change is, there's so many different elements to the event. There's not just one, like trying to get the whole industry united. You know what I mean? You have hospitality, then you have the hotel industry, you have the restaurant industry. We all kind of fall under hospitality. So you have event planners. Event planners weren't even factored in initially to the government bailout, right? So it was, you either had to be like, it was so wonky, the whole thing. It was like, are you a venue owner? Are you a restaurant owner? Are you an event planner? Like, they didn't have all of the elements factored in. So I just don't think anyone understands what hospitality is and who's involved in that industry. So I would love to see all of it united somehow under like one umbrella, but where everybody has their lane. You had the restaurants that were hit so hard, and then you had hotels that were just completely shut down. But then you had the small business, venues and event planners, and also, the social planners that are doing it. And none of them were really considered until kind of the end. So to me, I think, the industry as a whole has to somehow come together more and just be included. I feel like, even when you're filling out something and you go to the drop down, there's nothing for event planning ever. It's either entertainment, but event planners don't fall under entertainment. So there's really no category. So I think that has to change a little bit, having more diverse categories of what's involved in hospitality.
It's definitely a battle being fought by many, and I think you make a good case for the reasons why it's an important battle to fight. And in terms of sort of this future where we'd like to see the industry going, are there any kind of types of events or any formats, any kind of experiences that you believe we should see more of and we will see more of in the future?
Good question. I think, what we're going to see more of is, again, people want to be in person with one another. So I do think we will see those. I just think they might be a little bit different in a sense of like, maybe less attendees and maybe more of them spread out throughout the country instead of doing one regional one. So we're already kind of seeing stuff like that. And what I would like to see more of is just, different ways of delivering kind of the same event, which is what we're currently doing. So maybe we're live streaming it, bringing in more technology. I think technology has really been a savior during these times that we're going through and experiencing. And I think having more technology is a good thing, and seeing what's new out there and, being able to interact more with it. Like, for example, you're using Zoom and you have a chat and you can chat questions in and you can use the Q&A and you can raise your hand. So they've already added, some new features there. Like, now you can click little, when you raise your hand, you can click a little question mark and like little things that you can do there. So I just think enhancing the technology that we have and utilizing more of that to make the experience better for folks who maybe are not in person.
Yeah, it sounds like the next evolution of the virtual side of events. I think we're all looking forward to that. Alicia, thank you so much. I think we've covered a lot of different areas. I didn't expect us to go so far into the metaverse, but it's really interesting to understand, where you're seeing that going and how you're kind of having conversations about that. And I hope you will let us know when you do your next event in the metaverse. We'd be interested to understand how that works, and maybe if you give us a behind the scenes look at that, we'd be very grateful.
Yeah, that would be actually a great idea to do something like that. I'd love it.
So I'd like to end with the question that we ask all our guests, which is to recommend another guest that you believe should be on the podcast.
Yeah, I think Elaine Pofeld would be great. She is an independent journalist. She writes for Crain's, for Forbes. Her focus is on the micro business. So she actually wrote about me in Forbes. So she focuses on entrepreneurs that are running a company by themselves and hitting over $1 million in revenue. It's a new niche that, 2 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, was a very small group of entrepreneurs. Now it has expanded, and she really focuses in on what those traits are. And again, the commonalities in each entrepreneur that has been able to do this as a solopreneur. So for myself, I'm included in her next book. She's written 2 books now about each of these individuals. And I'm in her second book, which is Tiny Business, Big Money. And I think she'd be great because she can offer a lot of insight that can help entrepreneurs get to that next level, especially if you're doing it alone. So as you know, it's lonely at the top. But is what they say, right? And it can be, it can be. So I think going in and having some knowledge of what other entrepreneurs have done along the way can help, which is what I like doing. I like to help other entrepreneurs kind of get to the next stage, because it is hard to do on your own. And whether you're bringing in independent contractors or different partners that you may partner on to execute things, there's ways that you can achieve that result with some outside help, not necessarily having to hire employees, because not everyone wants to scale. There's other ways to scale without hiring employees. My personal opinion, I don't want to be a manager. I don't like managing other people. So I'd rather have a partner or an independent contractor that I can just tell what to do and they know what to do. So there's different avenues to get to that next level. And I think she'd be great to kind of help others do that.
Excellent. We'll definitely have a word with her. And I think a lot of that applies to so many people across the event industry. So thank you for that recommendation.
Sure.
Alicia, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the Event Manager podcast. I wish you much success with all your events, including the ones in the metaverse. And we look forward to hearing more about your next events and hopefully how they turn out.
Well, thank you, Miguel. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Event Manager podcast. Please subscribe and rate the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For the latest news and the best articles on technology and innovation in the event industry, head over to eventmb.com.